That night, between the clink of dishes and string lights flickering overhead, my mother's palm cracked against my left cheek. My father followed with another blow while relatives watched, and my uncle just laughed. She needed that. Someone's phone was recording. I stood steady, swallowing blood in my mouth, and made my decision. If family had turned this party into an execution ground, I'd turn our next meeting into a courtroom. And there, the laughter would change sides. My name is Maya Ellison, and I built my life with my own hands, literally. 10 years ago, I converted an old feed store on the outskirts of Redwater, Colorado, into Copperfinch Workshop, where I craft custom furniture for restaurants and hotels across the western slope. The smell of linseed oil and oak dust had become my morning prayer, the whir of the lathe my meditation. Every mortise and tenon joint, every hand-rubbed finish, was proof that I could create something solid in a world that often felt like it was coming apart at the seams. The workshop sat attached to my house, a modest ranch I'd bought with my first big contract, back when the bank manager laughed at a 24-year-old woman asking for a commercial loan. Now, at 34, I had contracts with 3 restaurants in Aspen, a waiting list 6 months long, and a reputation for pieces that could survive both trends and time. The property was my only collateral, my greatest achievement, and though I didn't know it yet, the target of my family's careful planning. My mother, Lorraine, still introduced me at church as my daughter who does woodwork until she finds a husband. She'd call every Sunday at 7:15 a.m., sharp, not to ask about my work or well-being, but to remind me that family money stays in the family. By this, she meant my income should flow toward whatever crisis she'd manufactured that week. Dad's truck repairs, her sister's dental work, the endless renovation of their double-wide that never seemed to progress despite the checks I'd written. Wade, my father, was quieter in his resentment but no less poisonous. He'd show up unannounced at the workshop, running his fingers along my finished pieces, calculating their worth with the same expression he wore at livestock auctions. Could get $3,000 for this easy. He'd mutter about a dining table I'd priced at $8. You're overcharging folks. Maya, not very Christian. He never mentioned the years he'd spent drinking away his contractor's license, or how I'd paid off his debts to keep him out of court. Then there was Buck, my mother's older brother, a general contractor who operated in that gray zone between legitimate business and small-town grift. He had a gift for winning bids he couldn't complete, starting projects he'd never finish, and somehow always walking away with profit while his clients dealt with liens. 6 months ago, he'd cornered me at my grandmother's birthday, breath thick with whiskey, asking to borrow my workshop's licensing and insurance for a hotel renovation bid. Family helps family, he'd said, gripping my shoulder hard enough to leave marks. When I refused, his expression had shifted from friendly uncle to something else entirely. You've forgotten where you come from, girl. I hadn't forgotten. I remembered every Sunday dinner where my success was dissected like a carcass, every family gathering where my unmarried status was a greater shame than Buck's bankruptcies or my father's DUIs. I remembered Lorraine taking credit for my business at her book club, claiming she'd guided Maya's little hobby into something profitable. I remembered Wade telling his drinking buddies that he'd co-signed my loans a lie that spread through Redwater until I had to show bank documents to prove otherwise. The workshop was my boundary, my proof that their version of my story was false. Inside its walls, I wasn't the disappointing daughter or the selfish niece. I was a craftsperson, a business owner, someone who'd built something from nothing without their help and despite their hindrance. The router table, the industrial band saw, the hand tools arranged on pegboard like a surgeon's instruments, these were mine, bought with money I'd earned, in a space I'd created. But boundaries only work when others respect them, and respect was a currency my family had never traded in. They preferred older forms of exchange guilt, obligation, and when those failed, force. I should have seen it coming when Lorraine started her campaign about Grandma's medical bills 3 weeks ago. The calls increased from weekly to daily. The stories became more elaborate specialists in Denver, experimental treatments, insurance refusing coverage. She never provided paperwork. never gave me the clinic's name, never let me speak to Grandma directly. You wouldn't understand the medical terms. She'd say, "Just trust your mother." Trust. In my family. That word was just another tool, like a hammer you could swing at someone's head. Lodge Creek Hall smelled like 40 years of potluck dinners and pine floor cleaner. My grandparents' anniversary banner hung crooked above the stage. 40 years of love spelled out in gold foil letters that caught the string lights strung between the rafters. I arrived at 6:30 p.m., carrying the walnut picture frame I'd made for them, 40 hours of detail work they'd never notice. The relatives were already thick as locusts. Cousins I saw once a year, great aunts who still called me Little Maya, Uncle Buck holding court near the bar with his contractor buddies. My parents stood by the gift table, Lorraine clutching a manila folder like a weapon. "Finally," she said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Working on a Saturday night? Some priorities you have." I set down the frame. "Happy anniversary, Mom." She grabbed my wrist, her acrylic nails digging crescents into my skin. "We need to talk, now." Wade flanked my other side, bourbon already thick on his breath. They steered me toward the corner, past tables of relatives who pretended not to watch. Buck drifted over, casual as a shark. "Sign this." Lorraine thrust the folder at me. "For Grandma's treatment." Inside were legal documents, dense with text. My eyes caught phrases: power of attorney, full and complete authority, all real and personal property, not temporary, not medical, complete control. "This gives you ownership of my house," I said. "My workshop." "It's just paperwork," Wade said. "Family helping family." "Helping by stealing my business." The slap came without warning. Lorraine's palm connected with my left cheek hard enough to snap my head sideways. The hall didn't go quiet, not completely, but conversations stuttered. I tasted copper. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "After everything we've done." "You've done nothing but take," I said. That's when Wade hit me. Right side this time, his contractor's hand heavier than hers. My vision sparkled. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Buck's laugh, rich and delighted. "She needed that," he announced to his circle. "Girl's forgotten her place." Someone's phone was up, recording. I saw others, 2 cousins, great aunts, all their screens glowing like tiny spotlights. The string lights above us swayed slightly, casting moving shadows across their faces. I straightened, blood pooling behind my teeth. Swallowed it down. Around us, the party resumed its rhythm forks scraping plates, kids chasing between tables, the old speakers crackling with country music, as if nothing had happened, as if this was normal. "Sign it," Lorraine said, quieter now. "Or we'll make things difficult." Buck stepped closer. "Your workshop's zoning could be reconsidered, permits re-examined. Amazing what a few phone calls can do in a small town." They waited, the 3 of them, sure of their victory. The folder trembled in Lorraine's extended hand, not from shame, but from adrenaline. She was excited. I took out my phone, slow and deliberate, photographed my face, the red welts already rising. The hall's fluorescent lights caught every detail. Then I turned, walking toward the exit with measured steps. "You walk out that door. You're done with this family." Wade called after me. I paused at the threshold. Around the room, phones were still out, still recording. My cousin Janine near the dessert table. Great Aunt Dorothy by the stage. At least 6 others I could count. They'd all captured it, the slaps. Buck's words. Maybe even the conversation about the documents. "Keep recording," I said, loud enough to carry. "You'll want to remember this." The door closed behind me with a soft click. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck and made a list on my phone, names of everyone I'd seen recording, where they'd been standing, what they might have caught on camera. My face throbbed in time with my heartbeat, but my hands were steady as I typed. Then I drove to the 24-hour urgent care on Route 6. Not the emergency room that would create the wrong kind of record. I needed documentation, not drama. The intake nurse took one look at my face and fast-tracked me through. Domestic incident, she asked gently. Family party, I said. And yes, she nodded, made notes. The doctor who examined me was thorough photographs from multiple angles, measurements of the contusions, x-rays to rule out fractures. Every detail entered into the system with clinical precision. We can call the police, the doctor offered. Tomorrow, I said. Tonight. I just need the medical records. Sunday morning, 8:45 a.m. I sat in Kara Whitlow's home office, ice pack against my jaw, while she reviewed the medical records. Kara had handled my business incorporation years ago, one of the few lawyers in 3 counties who didn't golf with Buck or drink with Wade. Soft tissue trauma, bilateral facial contusions, she read. This is good documentation. Now we need the video. I'd already started. 3 cousins had responded to my texts, sending their recordings overnight. Janine's video was the clearest she'd been filming her daughter's dance when the slaps happened. Both strikes visible. Audio crisp enough to catch Buck's "she needed that" and the laughter that followed. We'll need a private investigator, Kara said. Someone who can pull metadata, verify the videos haven't been edited. Already called one. Marcus Torres, from Denver. He'll be here Tuesday. She looked up from her legal pad. You've thought this through. I've had 10 years to think about it. I just needed them to finally cross the line. We spent 2 hours building the foundation. Civil protection order first, the videos made that straightforward. Then the harder part, establishing the pattern of financial exploitation. I pulled up my credit monitoring app. There. I pointed at the screen. Credit application for Stockman's Building Supply. Submitted last Tuesday, using my social and my workshop's EIN. I never applied for this. Kara's expression sharpened. Credit fraud, that's federal. It gets better. Look at the delivery address. Buck's construction yard. The application listed him as an authorized user. They were planning this, Kara said. The power of attorney would have retroactively legitimized the credit line. Torres arrived Tuesday at dawn, a quiet man with accountant's eyes who treated evidence like scripture. We sat in my workshop while he extracted metadata from each video file, creating a chain of custody that would hold in court. 17 separate recordings, he said, laptop screen reflecting in his glasses. Timestamps all match. GPS data confirms location. No signs of editing. What about witnesses? I'll need signed affidavits. People get nervous when family's involved. They'll sign, I said. They love drama more than they fear Buck. Torres spent the week following paper trails. The credit application was just the beginning. He found 3 more attempts over the past year, all rejected for inconsistencies. Property records showed Lorraine and Wade had filed a change of address form with the county, listing my workshop as their residence starting June 1st, 2 weeks away. They're establishing residency, Torres explained. In Colorado, if they can show they've been living there, eviction becomes complicated, especially if they claim you invited them. The pattern emerged like grain in wood, visible once you knew how to look. Buck's failed bid for the Marriott renovation in March, right before he'd asked to use my licensing. Wade's DUI in April. The fine exactly matching the amount Lorraine had requested for Grandma's medications. The family meeting in early May where, according to cousin Janine, they'd discussed Maya's selfishness problem. Friday afternoon, Torres presented his findings in a neat folder: financial forensics, video analysis, witness statements from 6 relatives who'd seen the assault. Great-Aunt Dorothy had even provided her own written account. Unprompted, Buck's behavior was disgraceful. That poor girl. Now we build the civil case, Kara said. Assault, battery, attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. We'll file Monday. No, I said. Not yet. They both looked at me. I want them all in one room first. One more family gathering where they think they've won. Kara frowned. That's risky. They could escalate. They will escalate. That's the point. I pulled out my phone, showed them the text I'd drafted. I'm inviting them to a reconciliation meeting. Public venue. Neutral ground. They'll come because they'll think I'm ready to sign. And instead, we serve them papers. But first, we show everyone exactly who they are. Torres leaned back. You want witnesses? I want the whole town to see. Buck does business here. Wade drinks here. Lorraine plays church matriarch here. They've built their lives on reputation. So that's what we take first. Kara was quiet for a moment. Veterans Hall has good acoustics. Security cameras. County Sheriff's substation is 2 blocks away. June 14th, I said. 7 p.m. Gives us 2 weeks to prepare. What makes you think they'll all show? I smiled, feeling the still tender bruise pull. Because I'll tell them I'm ready to discuss the power of attorney. They won't be able to resist. Torres closed his laptop. You'll need more than paper service. If Buck gets violent, he will, and when he does, we'll be ready. That night, I sent the text to Lorraine. June 14th, 7 p.m., Veterans Hall. We should discuss this as a family. I'm ready to listen. Her response came in seconds. Finally coming to your senses. I sat in my workshop, running my hand along a piece of black walnut I'd been saving. The grain was tight, complex, with a defect in the center that most woodworkers would cut around. But sometimes the flaw was what made the piece. You just had to know how to reveal it. Torres called me at 6:15 a.m. on a Wednesday, voice tight with urgency. You need to see this. Meet me at the Conoco on Highway 50. 20 minutes later, I pulled up beside his sedan. Through his windshield, I could see Buck's F-350 parked at my workshop's side entrance. Tailgate down. 2 men were loading my industrial planer onto a trailer. Started an hour ago, Torres said, handing me binoculars. They've already taken the bandsaw. My hands shook as I focused the lenses. Buck stood in my workshop doorway, my locked workshop doorway, directing the theft like a conductor. He wore my grandfather's old army jacket, the one I kept on a hook by the door. How did they get in? Key. Buck had it in his hand when he arrived. The duplicate. I'd given Lorraine a spare key 3 years ago during a family emergency, when I'd been hospitalized with appendicitis. Never got it back. Never thought I needed to. Torres was already photographing, his camera's telephoto lens capturing everything. Want me to call the sheriff? No. Let them finish. He looked at me sharply. Maya. They're documenting their own crime. Look, Buck's truck has his company logo. The trailer's got registration tags. That's Danny Harwood helping him. He's on parole for theft. I lowered the binoculars. Get everything. Every serial number they load. Every trip they make. For 3 hours, we watched them strip my workshop. Tools I'd saved for, restored, maintained. The thickness planer I'd bought from an estate sale in Denver, driving 6 hours each way. The antique Stanley planes I'd found at auction, spent weeks refurbishing. They took it all, loading with the casual efficiency of men who'd done this before. But it was the documents that turned my stomach. Buck emerged from my office carrying banker's boxes, my files, contracts, tax records. He loaded them into his truck's cab, careful to keep them dry. Planning to understand my business before taking it over, Torres tracked them to Buck's construction yard, where they unloaded everything into a locked storage unit. Then he followed Buck to a coffee shop where my uncle met with someone Torres recognized. Jim Stockman, he told me later. Owns Stockman's Building Supply. They talked for 40 minutes. That evening, Torres obtained the security footage from the coffee shop's parking lot. Audio was impossible, but Buck had spread papers on his hood, pointing at what looked like architectural drawings. Stockman nodded, shook hands, passed Buck an envelope. He's pre-selling your equipment, Torres said, or using it as collateral for materials. The violation went deeper than theft. In my office, they'd left traces of their planning. Pencil marks on my workbench where someone had sketched new layout plans. Business cards in my desk drawer moved, some missing my client's contacts. They'd photographed my appointment book, evidenced by the iPhone photo sound my security system had captured. Torres pulled the property records for Buck's recent projects. 3 liens in the past year, 2 lawsuits pending. His bonding company had dropped him in March. He's desperate, Torres said. Your workshop would give him legitimacy again. Clean credit, good reputation, established contracts. What about the credit applications? More interesting. He showed me printouts from the fraud investigation. The application started right after you refused to let him use your licensing. But look at the timing, always right before he bid on big projects. He was trying to use your credit to secure materials for jobs he couldn't afford. Friday morning brought another discovery. Lorraine had been busy on social media, posting in Redwater's community groups. Proud to announce Buck Hensley Construction will be expanding operations, partnering with local craftsmen to bring artisan quality to commercial projects. More details soon. The comments were congratulatory. People who knew my work, praising Buck for supporting local artists. Nobody mentioned my name, but several referenced that beautiful furniture workshop on County Road 7. They're pre-announcing the takeover, Kara said when I showed her. Creating a public narrative where this is a business partnership, not theft. We found more. Wade had been visiting my clients. According to Torres's surveillance, casual drop-ins at restaurants where my pieces furnished the dining rooms. Just checking on the furniture, he'd say, making sure you're happy with the service. Introducing himself as my father, implying oversight he'd never had. The most damaging discovery came from cousin Janine, who called me Saturday night. Maya, I thought you should know. Mom heard from Aunt Lorraine that you're having mental health issues, that you attacked them at the anniversary party and they had to defend themselves. She's telling everyone you're bipolar, off your medication, that the family's trying to help you before you lose everything. The preemptive strike. If I came forward with assault charges, they'd claim I was unstable, violent, delusional. The stolen equipment would become family intervention, securing assets before I destroyed them in a manic episode. Janine, you were there. You saw what happened. I know, but Lorraine's been calling everyone, crying about her sick daughter, even showed people some kind of medical form. My stomach dropped. The intake form from urgent care. Lorraine must have a contact there, someone who'd leaked that I'd been treated for facial trauma, twisted now into evidence of mental illness. Torres worked through the weekend, building timelines, cross-referencing everything. By Sunday, he had a comprehensive report: conspiracy to commit fraud, grand theft, criminal impersonation, defamation, enough for criminal charges, but that wasn't my goal. You could have them arrested now, he said. Arrested means lawyers, delays, deals. They'd claim misunderstanding, family dispute. Buck might do 30 days. Wade would get probation. Lorraine would cry in court about her troubled daughter. I shook my head. No, we stick to the plan. June 14th was 5 days away. The Veterans Hall was booked, confirmed, and paid for under the pretense of a family mediation session. I'd even hired a legitimate mediator as cover, though she wouldn't be needed. They've already taken so much, Torres said, gesturing at his evidence files. Why give them another chance to hurt you? I picked up one of the photos, Buck loading my planer, his face bright with satisfaction. Because theft in the dark is one thing, I said. Exposure in the light is another. Tuesday morning, June 12th, 2 days before the meeting. I sat with Lindsay Cruz at the Riverside Diner, watching her review Torres's evidence files. The local reporter's expression shifted from skepticism to disgust as she scrolled through the surveillance photos. They really stripped your workshop, she said, in broad daylight, while telling everyone I'm mentally ill and they're protecting my assets. I slid her the social media printouts. The narrative's already set. Troubled daughter, concerned family. Lindsay had covered Redwater for 15 years. She knew Buck's reputation, Wade's drinking, Lorraine's church politics. Family financial abuse doesn't usually make front page, she said carefully. This will... I opened my laptop, showed her the full plan. June 14th, 7 p.m. Veterans Hall. They think it's a reconciliation meeting. Instead, it's an evidence presentation. With legal service. You're ambushing them. I'm documenting them. In real time, with witnesses. I pulled up the hall's layout on my screen. Audio-visual systems already arranged. Professional setup. Multiple cameras. Every word, every reaction, Captured legally. Lindsay's eyes sharpened the look of a reporter sensing a real story. You want media there? I want truth there. Whether you record it is your choice. She was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee. Buck's been spreading money around town. Small business loans, construction deals. People might not want to see this. Then they need to see it more. I showed her the credit fraud documentation. He's not using his money. He's using stolen credit. My credit. When this collapses, those small businesses get hurt. You have proof. Torres tracked 3 of Buck's recent investments, all paid with cash advances from credit cards applied for with my information. The applications were rejected, but he's been telling people the money's coming. Lindsay pulled out her recorder. Tell me about the assault. I walked her through it, clinical and clear. The power of attorney demand, the slaps, Buck's laughter. She took notes without interrupting, occasionally checking details against the medical records. 17 witnesses with video, she murmured. That's unprecedented. Family violence usually happens in private. They just got comfortable enough to do it publicly. Wednesday. I met with Sheriff Dale Morrison. We'd gone to high school together. He knew my family's dynamics, had arrested Wade twice for DUI. I showed him the protection order paperwork, the assault evidence, the theft documentation. Why not file charges now? He asked. Because I need them to show themselves. Buck's careful. He's got explanations for everything. The equipment family property dispute, the credit fraud misunderstanding, the assault mutual combat, they'll claim. I leaned forward. But if he violates a protection order in front of 50 witnesses, attacks someone during a legal service, that's different. Dale studied the evidence. You think he'll get violent? I know he will. Buck's never been told no in public. When he is, he explodes. I can have deputies nearby, off duty, but ready. 2 uniforms would be better, visible. Let people know this is serious. He agreed. Understood the chess game. Small-town politics meant Buck had friends, but it also meant everyone knew his patterns. Dale had been waiting years for Buck to cross the line clearly enough to act. Thursday afternoon, the technical rehearsal. I'd hired AV techs from Denver strangers who wouldn't gossip. We spent 3 hours setting up main projector backup screen, distributed speakers, 3 cameras for documentation. You want the house lights on a dimmer, the lead tech asked. Full control, dark to bright, instantly if needed. We tested everything. The videos from the anniversary party looked massive on the screen. Lorraine's hand swinging. Wade's follow-through. Buck's delighted face. The audio echoed in the empty hall. She needed that. Jesus, one tech muttered. Your family. Not after Saturday. The process servers arrived for briefing. 3 professionals from Denver, experienced in hostile serves. I assigned each to specific targets: Lorraine, Wade, Buck. Backup servers would handle any additional family who'd participated in the conspiracy. Expect resistance, I told them. Buck might run or fight. Wade will be drunk. Lorraine will scream. We've handled worse, the lead server said, but usually not all at once. Friday morning, final preparations. Kara reviewed every document protection orders, cease and desist letters, civil lawsuit papers, criminal complaint forms. Each packet was triple-checked, sealed, ready. Once we serve these, no going back, she said. We crossed that bridge when they took the first swing, Lindsay called that afternoon. My editor approved the story. I'll have a photographer there. No flash during the presentation. Understood. Maya, are you sure about this public humiliation cuts both ways? I thought about my workshop, empty now except for the pieces they couldn't move, the built-in benches, the wood rack, the worn spots on the floor where I'd stood for thousands of hours. Humiliation assumes I have something to be ashamed of. I don't. Saturday morning, June 14th. I woke at 4:30, couldn't get back to sleep. Made coffee, watched the sun rise over the mountains. My phone showed texts from relatives, all planning to attend the mediation. Lorraine had been thorough, ensuring maximum witnesses for what she assumed would be my capitulation. At noon, I drove past the Veterans Hall. Buck's truck was already there, along with Wade's sedan. They were pre-positioning, planning to control the room. Let them. The tech crew wouldn't arrive until 5 p.m., and the legal team until 6:30. 3 p.m. Torres called. They're at your workshop again, loading more equipment. Let them. Add it to the theft charges. Maya, they're taking your grandfather's tools, the ones you restored. Those hurt. Hand planes from the 1930s, spoke shaves, chisels with handles worn smooth by decades of use. But sentiment was a luxury I couldn't afford today. Document everything, I said. 5 p.m. The tech crew arrived, began setup. I watched from my truck as family members started gathering, early for the 7 p.m. meeting. They wanted to watch me break, to see me sign their papers, to witness my surrender. 6:45 p.m. I walked to the side entrance, where Kara waited with the servers, sheriff's deputies, and Lindsay's photographer. Through the door's window, I could see the hall filling. 50 people at least. Maybe more. Ready? Kara asked. I thought about Maya from 2 weeks ago, blood in her mouth, humiliated and hurt. That woman had spent a decade trying to earn their respect, to prove her worth, to be enough. Tonight, I would stop trying. Let's light them up. 7 p.m. sharp. I entered through the main doors, letting them slam shut behind me. The hall went quiet. 63 people by my count, arranged in rough camps. Buck's contractors occupied the left tables. Wade's drinking buddies held the bar area, and Lorraine's church friends clustered near the stage. My family had turned this into a coronation. Lorraine stood immediately, clutching the same manila folder from 2 weeks ago. Finally, we've been waiting. Sit down, Mom. Something in my voice made her pause. I walked to the front, past cousins who whispered, great aunts who frowned, Buck's associates who smirked. The tech crew had done their job cameras invisible in the corners, projection screen lowered but dark. Thank you all for coming, I said, taking the microphone. I know many of you are here because you care about family unity. Some are here for the drama. A few, I looked at Buck's crew, are here because you think you're getting a piece of my business. Buck laughed, that same rich sound from the anniversary party. Just sign the papers. Maya, stop wasting everyone's time. I have something to show you first. Call it context. I nodded to the tech booth. The lights went out. The screen blazed to life with Janine's video. There I was, 2 weeks ago, examining the power of attorney. The audio was crystal clear, Lorraine demanding I sign, me identifying the fraud. Then the first slap, so loud in the hall's speakers that people flinched. Wade's follow-up, Buck's laughter and those 6 words, she needed that. The lights stayed off as the video looped. Slap, slap. She needed that. Slap, slap. She needed that. Turn it off! Lorraine shrieked. Not yet! I clicked to the next slide, Torres's surveillance photos. Buck and his crew loading my equipment. Serial numbers visible. Company logo clear on his truck. June 9th, 10 a.m. Breaking and entering. Grand theft. Estimated value $42,000. Gasps from the church ladies. Buck stood up. That's family property. Next slide. The credit applications appeared. My personal information clearly visible. Buck listed as authorized user. Identity theft. Wire fraud. 4 attempts over 6 months. You're lying next. Screenshots of Lorraine's social media posts claiming I was mentally ill, bipolar, violent. Defamation. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. The room erupted. Buck's contractors looked confused, some edging toward exits. Wade had gone pale, gripping his beer bottle. Lorraine was screaming something about ungrateful daughters. Lights, I said. The hall blazed bright. That's when they saw the uniforms 2 sheriff's deputies by the main doors, hands resting on their belts. The process servers emerged from the side entrances, documents in hand. Lorraine Ellison, the first server announced, approaching my mother. "You are being served with a civil protection order and notice of civil suit." She tried to run, actually ran, heels clicking, toward the back exit where another server waited. The photographer's camera clicked rapidly, capturing her cornered expression as papers were pressed into her hands. "Wade Ellison!" The second server moved toward my father, who stood frozen by the bar. "Civil protection order and lawsuit for assault and battery." Wade took the papers numbly. His usual bravado evaporated. Someone laughed one of his own drinking buddies. But Buck fought. "You don't touch me," he snarled at the approaching server. "I'll sue you into the ground." "Sir, I'm authorized by the court." Buck swung. Not at the server. He was too smart for that, but at the projection screen, ripping it from its mount. The metal frame crashed down, narrowly missing Great Aunt Dorothy. "Mr. Hensley," Deputy Morrison stepped forward. "Step back." "This is bullshit." Buck grabbed a chair, raised it above his head. "She's setting us up. Can't you see?" The crazy bitch as Morrison and his partner moved fast. Buck dropped the chair to swing at them, a mistake that ended with him face down on the floor, hands cuffed behind his back. The assault on an officer happened in full view of everyone, 3 cameras, and Lindsay's photographer. "Stop!" Lorraine screamed. "She's sick. Maya's having an episode. We were trying to help her." I took the microphone again, my voice cutting through the chaos. "The medical records from my assault are public evidence now. So are the videos you're all in. 17 of you recorded that night. You saw what happened. You chose silence." Cousin Janine stood up. "I didn't choose silence. I gave Maya my video." "So did I," said Great Aunt Dorothy, surprising everyone. "Buck Hensley is a thug who's been stealing from this family for years. I'm glad someone finally said it." Others shifted, uncomfortable. The narrative was fracturing. "Here's what happens next," I continued, as Buck was hauled to his feet. "The protection orders are immediate. Lorraine, Wade, Buck, you cannot come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workshop. The stolen equipment will be returned by court order. The credit fraud is being investigated by federal authorities." "You can't do this," Lorraine wailed. "I'm your mother. You were my mother. Now you're a defendant." I set down the microphone. "Anyone who helped them, anyone who touched my equipment, spread their lies, or participated in the fraud, you'll be hearing from my lawyer." The exodus started immediately. Buck's contractors practically ran for the doors. Some relatives slipped out quietly, others lingered, unsure whose side to take. Wade stood alone at the bar, papers in hand, looking like he'd aged 10 years. But Lorraine tried one more time, approaching despite the protection order. "Maya, please." Deputy Morrison stepped between us. "Ma'am, you're in violation. Step back or face arrest." She looked at me over his shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of jail or lawsuits, but fear that her version of reality where she was the matriarch, the controller, the center had shattered in front of everyone who mattered. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes," I replied. "It is." Buck was dragged past, cursing and spitting, assault charges adding to his problems. The photographer captured it all, the mighty contractor who'd terrorized Redwater's small businesses, reduced to a perp walk in front of his peers. The hall hadn't emptied. Most people remained frozen, watching the machinery of justice grind forward. Buck was at the door now, Morrison's hand on his head, guiding him toward the patrol car visible through the glass. That's when he made his second mistake. "You're all witnesses," Buck shouted, twisting in the cuffs. "She planned this entrapment. I want every one of you to testify." He jerked free for a second, not running but lunging back toward me. Morrison caught him, but Buck's shoulder connected with the deputy's chest. Another charge attempted assault, resisting arrest. The second deputy joined, and together they carried him out, his work boots dragging across the polished floor. "Federal investigation," someone whispered. "Did she say federal?" I picked up the microphone again. "The FBI's white-collar crime unit received our complaint yesterday. Identity theft across state lines. wire fraud involving federal banking systems. Buck used my information to apply for credit with companies in Wyoming and Utah. Jim Stockman, who'd been hiding in the back, went white. He'd taken Buck's fraudulent credit as collateral. Lindsay's photographer turned, catching his expression perfectly. The stolen equipment, I continued, is currently in Unit 43 at Buck's storage facility. We have surveillance footage of every item being removed from my workshop, serial numbers documented. If anyone purchased or received any of that equipment, you're in possession of stolen goods. 3 of Buck's contractors headed for the exit immediately. They'd been using my tools on job sites, billing clients for premium craftsmanship. Lorraine made another move toward me, stopped only by the yellow tape line Torres had laid down exactly 500 feet from where I stood. She pressed against it like it was a physical wall. Maya, honey, we can talk about this. Ma'am, final warning, Morrison's partner said, returning from the parking lot. Cross that line. You're under arrest. I'm her mother, Lorraine screamed. This is insane. Someone help me. But the church ladies were backing away. The drinking buddies had abandoned Wade. Even family members who'd always taken their side were retreating. The videos had done their work. Everyone had seen the assault, heard Buck's laugh, witnessed their pride in hurting me. Wade finally spoke, his voice slurred but desperate. Maya, I'm your father. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked at him directly. It meant everything. That's why it took me 34 years to stop accepting it. You're killing your mother, he said. Look at her. Lorraine had collapsed into a chair, sobbing theatrically. But I noticed she positioned herself where Lindsay's photographer could see her, still performing even now. She's not dying, I said into the microphone. She's losing control. There's a difference. That's when the federal agents entered. 2 of them, badges visible, walking straight to Kara. They'd been waiting outside, letting the state charges play out first. Kara pointed to the evidence table we'd set up bankers' boxes of documentation, USB drives of surveillance footage, printed credit applications. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, Agents Delgado and Singh from the FBI's Denver office. They'll be interviewing anyone who received goods or services from Buck Hensley in the last 6 months. The stampede started. People who'd been frozen now scrambled for exits, but the agents were efficient, taking names at the door, handing out interview appointments. Jim Stockman tried to leave through the kitchen. Torres was there with his camera, documenting everything. Wade stumbled toward the tape line, stopped just short. You planned all this. You wanted us to hit you. No, I said. I wanted you to love me. When you hit me instead, I planned this. He opened his mouth, closed it. Behind him, Lorraine had given up the performance, sitting rigid with rage. Her carefully styled hair had collapsed, lipstick smeared from crying. She looked smaller somehow, ordinary. Mr. Ellison, Agent Delgado approached Wade. We need to discuss some credit applications filed in your daughter's name. I don't know anything about that. Your signature is on 3 of them as a reference. Wade's face crumpled. He looked at Lorraine, who wouldn't meet his eyes. She said it was to help Maya's business. Said Maya asked us to co-sign. Wade, shut up! Lorraine hissed, but the dam had broken. She had the forms. Said Maya was too proud to ask directly. I just signed where she pointed. Agent Singh was writing everything down. Mr. Ellison, we'll need you to come to the office Monday morning. Outside, blue and red lights flashed as Buck was driven away. Inside, the hall felt like aftermath chairs overturned, screen torn down, papers scattered where people had fled. The cameras were still rolling, capturing the debris of my family's empire. There's more, I said into the microphone. Lorraine Ellison has been collecting money for Grandma's medical bills. $3,000 from Cousin Robert, $1,500 from Aunt Patricia, $5,000 from church donations. Lorraine's head snapped up. Grandma's Medicare covered everything. There were no additional bills. I verified with the hospital yesterday. The church ladies gasped. Robert stood up, face flushing. Lorraine, is that true? She's lying. Lorraine shrieked. She's sick. Can't you see she's having a breakdown? I clicked to the final slide bank records Torres had subpoenaed, showing deposits matching the amounts, all going into Lorraine's personal account, then transferred to Buck's business. $23,500. I read. Fraud. Elderly exploitation. Since Grandma's name was used, that's a felony in Colorado. You fucking bitch. Lorraine lunged forward, crossing the tape line. Morrison's partner was ready. The arrest was swift, professional. Lorraine Ellison, church board member and prayer circle leader, handcuffed in front of everyone she'd ever tried to impress. Elder abuse charges will be filed Monday, I announced as she was let out. Anyone who donated to Grandma's fictional medical bills should contact the district attorney's office. Wade stood alone now, swaying slightly, papers crushed in his fist. What am I supposed to do? Get a lawyer, I said. Get sober, get help, but get away from me. He stumbled toward the exit, past the agents, past the photographer, past the relatives who wouldn't look at him. At the door, he turned back once. I'm still your father, he said. Biology doesn't grant you access to my life. I replied. It never did. The hall was nearly empty now. Only Kara, Torres, the tech crew, Lindsay, a few relatives, and the agents remained. Dorothy approached the tape line, stopped respectfully short. Maya, she said. That took courage. It took evidence, I corrected. Courage without proof is just noise. The process servers finished their documentation at 8:43 p.m. Every service had been completed, signatures obtained, photographs taken. The evidence boxes were sealed for the federal agents, who carried them out with the kind of care usually reserved for explosives. The tech crew began breaking down equipment, and I heard one of them whisper, "That was fucking incredible!" Lindsay Cruz approached me as the last camera was packed. Maya, that was justice. I was going to say devastating, but yes, that too. She showed me her camera's preview screen, Lorraine being arrested, Buck thrashing in cuffs, Wade stumbling alone through the doors. This runs tomorrow. Front page. Good. Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. Buck's truck would be impounded as evidence. Wade's sedan sat crooked in its space, abandoned when the agents offered him a ride to avoid a DUI. The June night air was sharp, mountain cold despite the season. Kara found me leaning against my truck. They'll try to retaliate. With what their reputations are destroyed, Buck's facing federal charges. Lorraine's going to prison for elder fraud. Wade's about to lose everything in civil court. Family's not always logical. I thought about that word family. For 34 years, it had been a chain around my neck, disguised as love. Every manipulation justified by blood, every cruelty excused by relation. They're not my family anymore, I said. They're just people who hurt me. Torres walked over with his final report. Your workshop equipment will be returned tomorrow. Sheriff's supervising personally. And Maya. He smiled slightly. Your cousin Janine just sent me 12 more videos from other relatives. Apparently, your great-aunt Dorothy's been collecting evidence for years. She has recordings going back to when you were in high school. The knowledge sat heavy. All those years, someone had been watching, documenting, but never intervening. Still, evidence was evidence. Lindsay's story would run in 6 hours. By noon tomorrow, everyone in 3 counties would know what happened. Buck's business would collapse. No one would hire a contractor facing federal fraud charges. Lorraine would lose her church position, her social standing, everything she'd built on the foundation of being a good mother. Wade would drink himself into oblivion or finally hit bottom hard enough to change. I didn't care which. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, a photo of my industrial planer, sitting in my workshop, returned somehow in the chaos. Below it, a message. Some of us knew the truth. We just needed someone brave enough to tell it. Danny Harwood, Buck's parolee assistant, who'd helped steal my equipment. He'd been returning it piece by piece during the meeting, using Buck's own keys. I looked back at the Veterans Hall, The lights were still on, yellow tape across the entrance, one patrol car remaining. Through the windows, I could see the torn projection screen, overturned chairs, the debris of my family's destruction. "Maya," Lindsay said, "I need a quote. For the story." I thought about all the words I could say, about trauma and healing, about justice and revenge, about the price of truth, but only 2 sentences felt right. "Blood dries quickly under lights," I said. "Lies don't." She wrote it down, word for word. At 9:15 p.m., I drove home alone. My workshop stood dark against the mountain backdrop, empty but still mine. Tomorrow, Torres and the sheriff would supervise the return of my equipment. Next week, the civil trials would begin. Next month, the federal case. It would take years to fully untangle, to process, to heal. But tonight, for the first time in my life, I walked through my door without checking for ambushes. I turned on my workshop lights without fear of finding family waiting. I ran my hand along the empty workbench and felt possibility instead of loss. The wood was still there, waiting. Black walnut with that defect in the center, the one I'd been saving. Tomorrow, I'd start shaping it into something new, not despite the flaw, but because of it. The grain was always most beautiful where it had been forced to grow around damage. My phone rang Kara, confirming tomorrow's schedule. Then Torres, with updates on evidence. Then Janine, crying, apologizing for years of silence. I answered them all with the same steady voice, the one I'd found somewhere between the first slap and the final arrest. Outside, Redwater slept unaware that its careful social order had cracked. Buck Hensley, the untouchable contractor, Lorraine Ellison, the perfect mother, Wade Ellison, the harmless drunk. Tomorrow, they'd all have new names: defendant, felon, fraud, and me. I was still Maya Ellison, furniture maker, business owner, survivor. The bruises had faded, but the lesson remained bright as workshop lights. Sometimes the only way out is through. And the only way through is with evidence, witnesses, and the cold, clean cut of law. I pushed open the shop door and stepped into the night. The stars were sharp above the mountains, and the air smelled like pine and possibility. Somewhere, my family was dealing with handcuffs and booking procedures. Somewhere, lawyers were preparing defenses that wouldn't hold. But here, in this moment, I stood free in my own space, my own life, my own truth. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Final. Certain. Done. Thank you for listening to this story of justice and courage. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives make these stories richer for everyone. Until next time, remember, your truth is your power, and evidence is your shield.